You are listening to episode 749 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, I'm going to be speaking with Jeremy, who is a nurse and a few other things. Got a bunch of letters behind his name. He'll tell you about it in a second. I loved the conversation that Jeremy and I had. Jeremy is the exact kind of clinician you're hoping to get when you have type 1 diabetes. While you're listening today, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes or is the caregiver of someone with type 1, you'd be doing me a personal favor. You'd be supporting the show. You'd be helping people with type 1. You'd be helping yourself if you went to t1dexchange.org/juicebox, joined the registry, and completed the survey. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. I've got this little bit of time left here. I don't know what to do with it. You should check out the Pro Tip series. It begins at episode 210. It's really good. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is brought to you by Omnipod 5. Learn more about the Omnipod 5 and get started today at omnipod.com/juicebox. And if you already have the Omnipod 5, don't miss the Pro Tip series just for the Omnipod 5. It's a 3-part series on episodes 736, 737, and 738. Today's podcast is also sponsored by the Dexcom G6 Continuous Glucose Monitoring System. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Head there right now and find out if you're eligible for a free 10-day trial of the Dexcom G6. You just may be. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com to Dexcom, Omnipod, and all the sponsors.
My name is Jeremy. I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm also a certified diabetes care and education specialist and board certified in advanced diabetes management.
Wow. That's quite a list of bona fides you have there. I didn't know I was going to be talking to a professional.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I'm completely obsessed with diabetes. So
do you have it?
I don't. I actually don't have anyone in my family that has diabetes. I don't even know where my interest with it developed. My first job out of nursing school was on a pediatric diabetes floor. And I think that's probably where it started to grow. And then throughout my career, it's just gotten to be stronger and stronger of an interest.
Wow. Well, good for you. That's a really wonderful thing to devote yourself to.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's diabetes is different. To me, it's like every patient you see is just so different that it makes things interesting. Like it's never the same thing over and over again.
When you I don't know how to ask this. All right, well, hold on a second. Let me get to it. I almost got ahead of myself. Jeremy, don't. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah. Let me ask you this then. So, went to college to be a nurse. It's what you wanted to do. You're like, I'm going to get a nursing degree.
No. So I went to college and got a bachelor's in sociology. And worked in software development for a little bit and couldn't really do much with a bachelor's in sociology. So I went back to become a nurse. And then after I became a nurse, then I went back to school and got my master's in nursing to become a nurse practitioner.
No kidding. Good for you. And then what made you move? I mean, I guess not what made you, but how do you make the move towards diabetes? You just get a job and it's what it is? Or do you have to do you have to search it out? I guess that's my question.
It took me 10 years after I became a nurse to finally get a full-time job in diabetes, other than that first job I had in pediatric diabetes. I was in primary care and urgent care, but when I was in primary care, I was the diabetes guy in the office. So no provider in primary care, it's rather rare that they actually like working with diabetes because it's very difficult for most of them. So I was the guy that everyone would refer their patients to because I loved doing it. Mm-hmm. So I just I was the guy. So in primary care, it's rare to manage people with type 1 or anyone that's on a pump. And I had so many patients on pumps. I was just comfortable with it all. So I was doing that. And then a job came available at Joslin Diabetes Center. And I applied because it's what I wanted to do. And they hired me, and I've been doing full-time diabetes ever since then.
That's crazy. Good for you. Wow.
And then I got stolen by another hospital after.
Well, how does that happen?
I was doing a research project, or we were doing a quality improvement project at Joslin, and we were getting really good results. I was one of the clinicians like heading it, and the program manager of the place where I am now is the daughter of a woman that was doing the study with me. Mm-hmm. And she had raved about me to her daughter. And so her daughter, when someone put in their notice that they were retiring where I am now, she reached out and said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to work for us?" And where I am now, they have a nursing union. So the pay is significantly more than I was making. And that's how they were able to steal me.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hi, would you like to? There's more money. I'm on my way.
Yeah, it's the same exact job. I'm doing the same exact thing. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. So what is your day like at work?
It depends on so our days are split between, or my week is split between outpatient and inpatient. So outpatient, I'll see people in the office, or virtually. Usually like if it's a new patient, I have an hour. If it's a follow-up patient, I have 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I see anywhere from 8 to 16 patients a day. And then when I'm on inpatient service, we just are a consult service. So anyone that comes into the hospital with difficult to manage diabetes, they consult us. Or if they have type 1, we're the ones managing it. Like no team here manages type 1 diabetes except for us.
Okay. How many people on the team?
There are, on the inpatient team, there's 3 NPs and a PA, and plus we'll have an attending, like an MD or a DO on at the same time. Outpatient, there's, like 28 of us, I believe, or maybe, something like that.
When a patient comes in, how do they mostly see you? Do they see a doctor? How frequently do they see the MD, etc.?
So I'm kind of a unique situation. So when I moved to where I am now from Joslin, I had about 60 patients follow me. So they only see me every 3 months, and that's what they want. They have the option of seeing an MD if they want. The same thing with the patients I see now. Some will see me every 6 months and then the MD every 6 months. So we alternate for their visits every 3 months. But I would say about probably 70 or 80% of my patients only see me. Okay.
And then never, like you're saying, like once a year, even the MD, there's no like, I don't mean tech legal. I was going to say legal, but like insurance reason why they have to or anything like that.
Nope. In Massachusetts, we now have independent practice, but there's really insurance wise, there's no reason for them to see an MD unless they want to.
Okay.
It's really up to the patient. I really don't care one way or the other, but I've personally found that a lot of my patients don't want to see anyone else except me. So I just continue seeing them unless there's an issue and I have I run into a roadblock where I can't figure something out, and then I'll consult one of my colleagues. But that doesn't really ever happens unless it's a really weird case of diabetes, like someone that has had a total pancreatectomy, like they don't have any pancreas anymore.
Okay.
Those can be really hard to manage. But other than that, I mean, 99% of the cases I see, I can manage well. And most of my patients have an A1C less than 8 and a lot less than 7. So I do a pretty good job, I think, hopefully. Yeah. I mean, that's why I was stolen, I think. Yeah.
Well, no, I guess talk about that for a second. What's it like? What do I want to say? I guess give people your perspective of what it's like to see 5, 6, 7, however many people a day. And they all have, like you said, diabetes is different for everybody, but I think you mean their lives are different.
Yes.
Yeah, the diabetes is the same, right? The way insulin works, like the idea about having your basal right and pre-bolusing your meals. Like that stuff's the same for everybody. But what are the parts that impact people and change things?
It is lifestyle things. Like exercise is a big one, or lack of exercise. Their diet composition. I mean, with type 1, the wind can blow and your blood sugars can go crazy. So, I mean, for type 1, it's a lot harder in that regard anyway, because it can be very fickle. Like emotions can do it. So like, especially as people get older, and I have a lot of people with type 1 that are in their 50s, 60s that are then taking care of their parents, and they can have previously have great control before that. And then all of a sudden they have this extra life stress and their blood sugars just go crazy despite them not really changing much other than adding that stress. So, I mean, pretty much anything, like you talk with Jenny, like literally anything can be a variable. Like everything affects diabetes. Like that's one of the reasons I like it, is that it's literally everything in a person's life affects their diabetes.
Okay.
And so, kind of like a puzzle.
Yeah. And so how is it to figure that out when you don't see the people for very long?
So I'm kind of a micromanager with my patients. So I'm seeing them in the office every 3 months, but I'm usually touching base with them every couple of weeks to go over things, especially the people that don't have good control. And I basically micromanage until we get good control. So I'm frequently like calling people on my inpatient days when I'm like between patients to follow up, adjust their regimen based on how they're doing, and going from there. So I don't limit my time to the patient to just the office visit. I find that that's kind of futile. So I actually find that my office visits are fairly quick because I talk so much to them between visits. But I think that's just my practice style, and not everyone is like that.
Okay. Do you feel like when they leave, they know what to do, or they kind of have marching orders, and then after they march to that beat of that drum so many times, it starts to make sense to them?
So I'm a diabetes educator too. So I do pretty thorough education with them, especially if they don't understand concepts. For newly diagnosed people with type 1, I'm usually seeing them for their initial visit, and then usually touching base with them every like 2 or 3 days for 4 to 6 months until we kind of get things where they need to be. Because it's type 1 is just a different animal, whereas type 2, I can throw someone on something like Ozempic or Trulicity, and it typically corrects itself, and we don't really have to do anything much other than the once a week injection.
Right.
So it's really
tell me about that
variable.
Give me that for a second though. The meeting with people every 2 or 3 days. Meeting with them how? Text messages, video chats, on the phone?
I usually by phone.
Okay.
But usually I'll have like especially if they're type 1, I'll have like a Dexcom, like I'll go on Clarity and I'll be able to see what's happening, and we can go over specific things that they ate. They'll keep a log and we'll adjust based on that. But diabetes is so complex that I also don't want to overwhelm them all at one visit. So even if it's not a new diagnosis, that like you can't talk about diet and exercise and like sick day management, all the different other variables at the same time, because nobody's going to absorb that. It's just too much information all at once. So the way I do education is kind of piecemeal. Like I'll make sure they get one concept, and then I'll move on to the next one when they have kind of solidified that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when I was new, like I know I overwhelmed patients, like throwing everything at them, and it just nothing stuck, and it just wasn't a good use of my time or theirs.
How did you learn that it was overwhelming? Like what? I'm imagining like a real life situation happen, and then like what? Like, you know what I mean? Like what made you go, oh hell, no, I'm doing this wrong?
I think it was I mean, a lot of it's the look in their face when I'm done. And they're like, they have that deer in the headlights kind of look. The other thing that I found was that I would do all this education, and then when I'm following up with them a week or two later to touch base, they don't remember half of what we had talked about, and I was having to redo it.
Yeah.
And so when I started doing that enough, I was like, okay, this is clearly not working. And I started to break it up, and that was much more effective.
I take your point. Yeah. I'll tell you this. So this is kind of just, it's random, but I spoke to 2 people this morning I don't know. So 2 people who kind of banged on my door enough and was like, oh my God, I really need somebody to help me. And I had a little bit of time this morning. And so I talked to two mothers of young children. And you please understand, I don't know them. I've never met them before. I know nothing about them, right? And how am I going to try to get them moving in the right direction? So this is how the phone call starts. I say, hi, and they're like, hi. And sometimes people listen to the podcast and there's a moment where they're like, it's the guy from the podcast. I'm like, calm down. Like, I'm taking out my recycling now. Like, you know what I mean? Nothing special. Yeah. Nothing special is happening over here. And then I say, listen, first I need you to understand, I'm not a doctor. This isn't advice. We're 2 people chatting. If I say something you misunderstand, or, I just flat out get wrong, and someone ends up dead, it's not my fault. I need you to audibly tell me you understand, and they're like, yeah. Now I kind of say that so that they understand that, like, to be careful, you know what I mean? Like, you need to be careful, but, right. But then I immediately go like this. I go, all right, I'm going to ask you some questions. Just answer them real quick. How old? How long? What insulin? Do you think you're honeymooning? How much do they weigh? And then I say, what's going on? Then they blurt out all the stuff that is stuck inside of them for the last however many months or years, which ends up being very kind of therapeutic for them. I go, I completely understand. Here's what I think has to happen next. And then I immediately go to Basal. Like, I want to see the Basal right before we talk about anything else.
Yep.
And then make sure that they're, reasonably pre-bolusing their meals, understand the impacts of different food. And then from there, where I'm lucky and you're not, is then I get to like hand them episodes of a podcast and say, now here, just keep like broadening your understanding of this. And
I actually recommend the podcast to a lot of my patients. I have the list of like specific episodes printed out that I want them to listen to, and I actually refer a lot of people to your podcast. So,
well, Jeremy, now you and I like each other much more. Okay, so that's excellent. I was already enjoying you, but now much more.
Honestly, I was kind of not scared to do this interview, but my practice style and the things that I tell patients when I'm listening to them, like, holy crap, we sound like the same person. Wow. So I'm like, and I was like, we're not gonna have much to talk about because I do the exact same thing that he does.
Did you afraid that we were going to be like, oh, I agree.
Yeah, everything was just going to be agreeing. Like,
now listen, the first time I fell in love with Jenny is when I got off and I thought, wow, she and I think about this very similarly. And yeah, I just love that, because
I love Jenny.
Oh my God, there's not enough. There's not enough understanding at the level where you are at your job. Like I just. It's just true. You know what I mean? There are too many people who see too many practitioners who, it just happened this morning. I said to the second lady I was talking to, I said, hey, how many basal rates do you have? And she's like, I think it was like, he gets 4 all day. I'm like, yeah, but you're on a pump. I'm like, how many different rates? She goes, I don't know. I'm like, off the top of your head, you don't know how many different basal rates the kid has? And she opened it up, and every 2 hours was a different rate. By the way, none of them anywhere near how much insulin the kid needed. And, and I said, how did this happen? She goes, well, my diabetes educator kept changing it. And it's not always the same, Jeremy. I wouldn't want people listening to think like this is definitely what's happening to them. But so frequently I see people use too little basal, then they overdo it with meal insulin or corrections. They cause lows. Then they show the graph to a practitioner who says, oh, you're getting low. Let's turn your basal down. It's fascinating.
I see that a lot too. And to me, I don't know. So a lot of providers do that. And a lot of times when I see a new patient, I'll start from square one and make them do a basal rate evaluation where I have them either fast for 24 hours if they can do it, or have them fast for like 8 hours at specific times during the day, on different days to actually fine tune their basal rates and see what they actually are. And every time I do that, they are markedly different from what they should actually be.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, that's just fundamental. Like you need to have, like, I agree with you. Like you need to have the basal right to know what their bolus should be. Otherwise you're just going to be adjusting and working in the dark.
Yeah. It's all just, you could say it any number of different ways, right? But if you were building a car and you didn't know how much the car weighed, you wouldn't know how to throttle the car, right? Because the amount of horsepower you would need to drive this vehicle forward would be different if the vehicle weighed 2,000 pounds or if it weighed 6,000 pounds. So the basal's that weight. It's the base. And everybody skips over it like it doesn't exist. I mean, I'm telling you, like throughout the early days of Arden's life, basal was never spoken about like it was of any importance. It was just like, here's a number, that's right. Now let's move on to all the things you're going to screw up. You know, and I don't know. It seems like very common to me. Well, I'm going to ask you something because on your intake questionnaire, you really caught my attention. This idea has been in my head for years about a podcast. So, Jeremy, I think you might genuinely be the perfect person to talk to this, talk about this topic with me. So, The Omnipod 5 automated insulin delivery system is available now and waiting for you at omnipod.com/juicebox. Omnipod 5 is the only tubeless automated insulin delivery system that integrates with the Dexcom G6 CGM. And it uses Smart Adjust technology to automatically adjust your insulin delivery every 5 minutes, helping to protect against highs and lows without multiple daily injections. Omnipod 5 is also available through your pharmacy, which means you can get started without the 4-year durable medical equipment contract that comes with most insulin pumps, even when you're currently in warranty with another system. To get started today, go to omnipod.com/juicebox. Now, for those of you who aren't in the market for an automated system, but still want an insulin pump and love the idea of tubeless, you're looking for the Omnipod DASH. Head over to my link, omnipod.com/juicebox. While you're there, you'll be able to learn everything you need to know about the Omnipod 5 and the Omnipod DASH. And you can also find out if you're eligible for a free 30-day trial of the Omnipod DASH. My daughter Arden has been wearing the Omnipod since she was 4 years old, and she just turned 18. That is 14 years of wearing an Omnipod every day, and it has been nothing but a friend in this journey with insulin. Because the Omnipod is tubeless, you can wear it while you're showering, swimming, or participating in your favorite physical activity. It's a big deal to not have to disconnect from a tubed pump to do those things. Head over now to omnipod.com/juicebox to find out if you're eligible for that free 30-day trial of the Dash, to learn more about the Dash, or to learn more about the Omnipod 5. Get started today. Omnipod 5 full safety and risk information, as well as a list of compatible phones and clinical trial claims data, are available at my link. And at that same link, omnipod.com/juicebox, you can also find terms and conditions for that Omnipod Dash 30-day trial. How would you like to know what your blood sugar is without poking a hole in your finger? You can with the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitoring system, which is available at dexcom.com/juicebox. Not only does Dexcom offer 0 finger sticks, but you can get your glucose readings right on your smart device. That's your iPhone or your Android. Don't have a phone? That's okay. You can use Dexcom's receiver. On any of these devices, you're able to set up customizable alerts and alarms, setting your optimal range so that you'll get notified when your glucose levels go too high or too low. And you can share this data with up to 10 followers. Imagine what that could look like. Your child could be at school, and their data could be available to you, your spouse, their aunt, the school nurse, anyone who you choose. My daughter's been wearing a Dexcom forever, and it helps us in multiple ways. Around meals, we're able to see if our boluses are well-timed and well-measured. If they aren't, we can tell by how her blood sugar reacts, and then go back the next time and make an adjustment. Without the Dexcom CGM, we're sort of flying blind, but not just at meals, also during activity and sleep. The Dexcom offers us an unprecedented level of comfort and security. Being able to see my daughter's blood sugars in real time, and not just the number, but the speed and direction, is an absolute game changer if you're using insulin. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Head over there today to see if you're eligible for a free 10-day trial of the Dexcom G6. The Dexcom is at the center of how we've been able to keep our daughter's A1C between 5.2 and 6.2 for over 7 years. We've been able to minimize variability and keep her blood sugars in a stable range because of the information that we can see with the Dexcom. These are our results and yours may vary, but using Dexcom's feedback has helped my daughter, without any food restrictions, live a more normal and healthy life. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Concerned that people don't do a good job of interacting at their doctor's appointments. And I think it's more of a communication thing. And I think it's because we get put into maybe a subservient category when we slide into, some people get into the doctor's office and it feels like that person's in charge. They're smarter than me. They know more than me. I'm going to listen. My ideas aren't important here. I'll kind of keep quiet. Where I think it needs to be more of an actual human interaction. And I think you have to come in eyes forward, looking each other in the face and making declarative statements and asking for clear answers. But I don't think people do that. And I was wondering what you thought about it.
So I have a lot of thoughts about that. So I personally find not so much younger providers. I don't want to throw like baby boomers under the bus, but I think when they were going to med school, it was more paternalistic. And so I think when they get conditioned after seeing their provider for so long that that's how visits should go. Whereas I'm more almost like a coach. Like I don't tell patients what to do. I elicit information from them and I'm like, well, how would this work? Like, and we kind of troubleshoot together. But for them, when I'm doing that with them, a lot of people it takes them a few visits to actually
they clam up, right?
Get it? Yeah. They want me to tell them what to do. And it's like, no, you live your life. You need to tell me how that I can help you. Because I don't know how they live. I don't live their life. And if I can't get that information from them, then any suggestion I make is going to be useless because you need to meet them where they're at.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
And I find that I think it's actually rare to encounter someone with diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2, that doesn't have some form of disordered eating. And Jenny's a dietitian, I believe, correct? Not a nurse. So she's
got a couple things going on over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She might be able to speak better to that, but I find that like people come in and they have aversions to different foods. Like they don't want to eat fruit. They don't want to eat this or that because their provider told them like, you're eating too many carbs and you can't have this and you can't have that. And that's another barrier to overcome too. Like that they just get into this mindset of they can't do things. Mm-hmm. And to me that like life is way too short to live like that. Like
yeah.
If someone told me right now, like if I had type 1 right now and someone told me I can't have like mac and cheese ever again, I probably would flip them off. I just like it.
Yeah. Jeremy, you and I are aligned very well. So I think that I don't take a paternalistic view of it, but I do think that in some cases with some people, my knowledge might be fuller than theirs. And maybe they don't sometimes know what's important. And, I find there are these sort of like these dangling ideas when you ask people questions. I've talked about it before. You ask somebody, how's it going with your diabetes? And people go, great. And there's no context to that, like with a number or a variability or whatever, however you're measuring, it doesn't matter. Because great to them is just better than whatever bad was to them. So whatever the worst they were, if they're a little better than that, they're doing great. They have a 7.5 A1C. They're like, I'm doing great. I'm like, you're not doing great. You're not doing bad, but you're not doing great. And so the reason that's all important is because the person on the other end of that conversation, when they hear great, they ascribe a number to it. So I've been in conversations where somebody says, I'm doing great, and their A1C is 7. And when I hear great, I think, oh, their A1C must be 5.5. They're doing great, because that's my measuring stick. And it's so important to say it out loud. And then that translates to food. How do you eat? Oh, we eat great. Yeah. Well, if you grew up in a house where you didn't eat on Tuesdays because that's how we save money, you might think your McDonald's is great because it's way better than what was bad in the past. And now you over here, as the practitioner who's eating leafy green vegetables and fish on Tuesdays, you're like, oh, they eat great. They eat fish and leafy green vegetables and take vitamins. And there has to be an honesty. Now, the problem comes is that when sometimes patients are honest, then they run into a time where they get admonished, and then you're like, well, I'm not saying nothing because this guy yells at me all the time. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a huge problem.
Oh yeah. Especially, I think more so in pediatric diabetes, because I think providers think, oh, they're kids and they'll do whatever I say.
Yeah.
And then when they become adults, they come with that same baggage. I actually had a patient who her pediatric endocrinologist lost his license for the way he was treating patients. But he has given her so much PTSD with her diabetes that it's hard to get her over the anxiety of everything to effectively manage it because of how awful he was to her.
So, Jeremy, as poorly as I feel for this person, I have to ask for a tiny bit more context. How do you lose your license? What do you have to do for that to happen?
I'm not aware of the specifics. She told me about it, and then I asked colleagues at work, and they had heard about him losing his license. I don't know what specifically he did, but it was bad enough that he lost his license to practice.
That's insane. Wow, that's really crazy. I'm so sorry for her that she went through that. I think that we have to start speaking concretely, but without judgment. And what I mean by that if you're I don't care how you eat, honestly. Like if you're a vegetarian, if you're a carnivore, if you're at McDonald's every week, all these people, they deserve their blood sugars to be stable. And so it doesn't matter to me. There's no judgment about how you eat. I just need to know how you eat so we can know how to talk about this, because you can't just randomly say to me, my blood sugar goes up after dinner and it stays at 250 for 5 hours, but not tell me what you ate, because that's not enough information. So I mean, I think that's the first thing is if people are listening, when you go into your doctor's office, you just have to be honest. And if your honesty is met with, a response that doesn't make you comfortable, then you need another doctor, because if you don't get one, you're just going to start lying to the doctor. So now you're going to tell the doctor what they want to hear. The doctor's going to give you advice based on the lies you're telling them, and your outcomes are going to be just as bad. That makes sense?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. I make them get into specifics, and I have a very non-judgmental approach. I'm very honest with my patients too, that I had my own struggles. I think why I identify a lot with people with diabetes is that I had my own struggles with obesity my entire life up until like 2 years ago. I'm actually on Ozempic, which is for people with type 2 diabetes for weight loss. And it was very successful for me. I'm now like 150 pounds. Like I'm at a normal weight now for my height. But it was a struggle, and I completely empathize with the people that like eat fast food, and like, cause that's what I was doing. Like I wasn't eating like healthy like I should. Right. And I mean, I still don't eat like
perfectly
like completely healthy, but I try to, but I don't like when they tell me what they're eating, I don't judge it. I just figure out what we need to do to manage that, what they're eating.
Yes.
And I focus basically on getting their A1C down. Once their A1C is at goal, then I start bringing up the subject of like, how can we incorporate like a healthier diet for you, and then work on that. But for me, it's one thing at a time. I'm not going to make someone make drastic changes to their diet and then we adjust their insulin, because that's just it's too much change at once. People will freak out with that.
Yeah. It's not reasonable. Like if that was reasonable, then we'd all weigh our goal weight. And we'd all look like we were on getting ready to fight in the UFC, right? I mean, because if that's how it worked, then we would designate a person in every town to walk around to every person and go, "Hey, be healthier," and they'd go,
exactly,
and they'd go, "Oh, hell, I'm glad someone told me. I'll go turn myself into a UFC fighter right now, but that's not how it works. So you can't ignore that portion of the human condition and then just start talking about how insulin works, because you're ignoring the bigger picture. The bigger picture is you're trying to manage them based greatly on what's going in their mouth. And so you need to know what that is. And you can't be stupid enough to think that you saying to them, stop eating that, means they're going to go out the door and go, oh, well, thank God that guy told me to stop eating that, because I'll never do that again. Because that's so I love, geez, Jeremy, look at you. I love you. Okay. Tell me how much you, would you tell me how much you weighed at your greatest number?
Yeah, I was 220 at my highest, but I'm only I'm like 5'7.5".
Okay.
It was, and for my body frame, it was not an appropriate weight. Like I was at like greater than 50% body fat. I was over fat and under muscled.
Right.
I got down to 140, and then now I've been working out to like build muscle mass back on, because I don't have a lot. And so I'm up to like 150 now because of that.
How long was that process for you?
So I started Ozempic March of 2000.
Jeremy, you got to stop saying that word, because in my head now I hear
yes.
Yeah. I can't think. I can just hear that commercial in my head. But anyway, go ahead.
Yep. So I started that March 2020, like right before the pandemic started. And I was walking to and from work, which was 3.5 miles each way. So I went on that. And by September, I was down to 140. I lost 80 pounds in that 6 months, and I've kept it off since then.
Wow, good for you. What does the drug do for you?
It controls your appetite. So before I was on it, I never got the signal to my brain that I was full. So I remember being like 21, 22, like doing my prerequisites for nursing school. And I ate a large Chicago style pizza. I was living in Chicago at the time. I ate a large Chicago style pizza, mozzarella sticks, a large fry, and a bunch of other stuff like for dinner one night. And I still felt hungry after I finished. Once I started on the Ozempic, I actually like feel full, like halfway to like 3/4 of a way through a meal now. And it was kind of a shock to me, because I never felt full before. I likely have a deficiency. Like Ozempic's a hormone that your body makes. It's just changed a little bit so that it lasts longer. Yeah. I'm willing to bet that I had a deficiency in it, and that's why it corrected it so dramatically. And most people with type 2 diabetes have a deficiency in that hormone as well, which is why it works so effectively for them.
Is it written off label for you?
So I'm on Wegovy now, which is the same exact medication. But it's just Wegovy is the weight loss version, basically. That is FDA approved for weight loss. But I was on Ozempic initially, and I had pre-diabetes actually. Like my A1C was 5.8 or 5.9, and that's how my provider was able to get it approved. And then now my A1C is like I think 5. So it definitely helped a lot in that department.
Wow, once weekly.
Yeah, once a week.
Oh crap. Huh.
And I actually use it a lot in people with type 1 as well that struggle with their weight. And it does great. It actually makes their blood sugars a lot more predictable and easier to manage. So I'm hoping eventually we'll get coverage for it for people with type 1, because it does amazing things for them. It also suppresses glucagon release, so you need less basal overall as well. And it slows gastric emptying, so you don't have to pre-bolus as much or as long as before. So it does a lot. It has a lot of good metabolic effects. And I'm sure, like the killer people with diabetes don't die from the diabetes. They die from things like heart disease or kidney failure, from the uncontrolled diabetes damaging those organs. And medications like Ozempic and Trulicity dramatically reduce your risk of having a heart attack or stroke. So it's very good for someone with any type of diabetes to be on it.
Does that by lowering your A1C, your blood sugar?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's insane. I didn't know we were going to learn so much from you. This is great.
I try. Yeah. I actually have an NP student who has type 1. She is a normal weight, but she was like, "Oh, I want to try Ozempic and see what it does for me. I want to experiment. So I prescribed it for her, got it approved through her insurance, and her average blood sugar went down by about 60 points just by starting that. And she didn't lose any weight on it, but it made her blood sugars so much more predictable.
No kidding. Any side effects that, like, did you grow a tail or anything weird?
No. Biggest side effect with it is nausea, and it typically goes away after you've taken it for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Like I got nausea for the first 2 or 3 weeks, but it was a kind of here or there thing. The nausea, though, is actually predictive of someone responding really well to it. So if you do get nausea, it usually means that you're going to be a very good responder to the medication. Mm-hmm. But once your body gets used to the increased level of the hormone, that nausea goes away.
Wow. That's really wonderful. Look at that. Science, huh?
Yeah.
There you go. Well, thanks, Novo Nordisk. I mean,
yeah,
that's who made that, right? They make both of them, actually.
I believe they make Ozempic and Trulicity, or Ozempic and Wegovy. Trulicity is made by, I think, Sanofi. I don't really follow the manufacturers of the different products because I don't like to be biased, and it's a lot to remember. But I think it's Sanofi that makes Trulicity.
Trulicity.
Which is the medication. It's in the same class. It's just a different medication.
Oh, okay. I understand. Well, I thought, okay, it doesn't matter. I don't know. That Ozempic song, though, whoever wrote that, freaking mind control genius.
Marketing genius there, yeah.
Because I don't like half know what Ozempic is. I don't need it, and I could sing that whole stupid song. It's the same reason I know about Mounds and Almond Joy from the old Charlie Brown TV shows when I was a kid.
Yep.
I've never had a Mounds or an Almond Joy in my life, but I know exactly how they're built and what's in them.
Yep.
Yeah, jingles. It's a lost art, Jeremy. Anyway, I'm still like overwhelmed as you're talking that you don't have diabetes. I think it's terrific. You know, like your amount of enthusiasm for it is exceptional, especially after you've been doing it for a number of years.
I don't get bored of it at all.
Does it feel like a challenge? Do you feel like you've fixed now I'm going to pick into your psychology. Like, so you, like, we've learned a lot about you. Like you said, you don't know why you went into, like, why did you go into nursing, do you think?
So when I was young, when I was 10, my father, it was actually national news, and there's like a true crime show on it. My father murdered my stepmother, and going through that, and I was very close with her. It made me kind of want to live my life to not impress her, but to honor her memory. She was a very caring person, and I just didn't want anyone to die a miserable death like she did. And so that initially I was actually going to become a social worker. And then when I learned that it's really, you don't do much as a social worker in a hospital, that's when I switched to nursing.
Okay. All right. Hold on a second. I don't know what number episode yours will be, but I have like 620 of them out. I think I have about 60 more recorded. I've spoken for thousands of hours to people with type 1 diabetes. You stopped me in my tracks in a way that no one has before. That really, it shocked me. Just tell me one more time. Your stepmother was murdered by your father?
Yes.
Your birth father?
Yes, correct.
I'm so sorry. Okay. How old are you?
I was 10.
Okay. You all live together?
So I split my time between that house and with my mom. So I was there on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then with my mom during the week.
Okay. But your parents had been split long enough that you had a real relationship with your stepmom.
Oh yeah. Like I met her when I was, I think, 3, and I was really close with her. Like she was a mom to me.
Wow. Your father's in prison?
Yep. Yeah. He gets out, I think in 8 or 9 years.
I have to ask you a question that has nothing to do with diabetes, but does that make you question yourself that somebody who you're that directly related to did something like that?
It does. It makes me scared to be angry, because I'm worried that I'll turn out like him. It like I don't have a violent bone in my body, but like if something upsets me, I don't give myself permission to get angry, essentially.
Yeah.
Because I don't want, like, I live with that fear that I'm going to hurt someone.
Looking back as an adult now, do you see, prior to it happening, do you see your father as someone like who could have done that? Or do you think it was like a crime of passion? Do you think he snapped, or do you think that's who he is?
So on the true crime, so I think it was on a TV show, I think on Investigation Discovery, called Most Evil. They called it a crime of passion, except when you read the court documents and know what went on, he planned it like weeks in advance. Like this, it wasn't just like he knew what he was doing. Sorry, I forgot like part of the question you asked.
I just meant, do you, in hindsight, like looking back as an adult, did you think he was a person who could have done that, or do you think he just kind of snapped?
I don't think he snapped. I think he was very controlling. He had been married, I think, 2 or 3 times before he had married my stepmom.
Okay.
His first wife, he beat her so bad on the lawn that she pretended to be like knocked out or dead so that he would leave her alone.
Oh my God.
And then he left and went to work one day, and then she escaped that situation. So he already had that history. The morning after it happened, we went to visit my stepbrother, and he had witnessed the very beginning of it. And he told me what had happened, and I believed him. Like he saw firsthand what was happening, and I didn't really like my dad. He was kind of a jerk to both of us.
Mm-hmm.
He was never like a warm and fuzzy dad. It was like, you kids are in my way, get out. So I was I was very confused by the adults in my life wanting me to continue to have a relationship with him and believing him that he was innocent and that it was self-defense. To me, it was kind of obvious. And at 10, when all these adults are being contrary to you, I don't know. It was very mind-boggling.
So when the adults are like, I can't believe this happened, you're like, I can. Like that kind of feeling?
Yep.
Yeah. I hear you. Wow, man. That's okay. Well, now we know why you're a nurse. That's good.
Yeah.
Figured that out. Like I hate to feel like I'm boiling people down to like, but I think people are caregivers for a reason. Like something happened to them. They want other people to feel better than they felt it just kind of seems obvious, but, and then you had a weight problem too, which then made me want to dig a little farther into it. Meanwhile, I know nothing about psychology. It was enough of a clue for me to ask. I did not think you were going to say my father murdered my stepmother, but
right, yeah.
I thought maybe you were going to be like, there was this girl in 8th grade. She used to call me a name, or I didn't know we were going to get here. I'm sorry. You were okay with all this, talking about it?
Oh yeah. Like I've went to therapy for years. I've always been very open about it.
Right.
I'm not a very private person at all. Like most people in my life know about it.
Okay. No kidding. You went to therapy.
Oh yeah. Definitely necessary.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad for you that you weren't there. Your mom must feel like she dodged a bullet, I would imagine.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Yep.
No kidding. Was she his first wife?
No, they never married.
Okay.
She was like the third, I think, relationship in that chain.
Wow. No kidding. Did your mom ever remarry? Did you have a stepfather?
No, my mom actually ended up coming out as a lesbian when I was in 7th or 8th grade. She had a girlfriend, but the girlfriend / partner didn't really like me. So that was interesting growing up with.
Jeremy, at least she didn't kill you. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
talking about what level of great there is. Like you're the first person I've ever met that not being murdered is like an upgrade. So
it is. Yeah, it is actually.
My goodness. Well, this is ridiculous. I'm not, for people listening, I did not know this was going to happen. I love talking like this because of the way things come out, but I'll tell you, no lie, man, you stopped me. Like when you said that, my brain went, I think he's talking about a television show, like, but it sounded like he said it was his real life. Like I could literally feel my brain like arguing with my consciousness, like that. Well, you probably misunderstood that. Ask it again. You know, wow, man, that's nuts. All right. Well, listen, I understand. I would tell you I don't think you're your father, but I would think that most of that stuff we model, unless it's hardwired, which you don't seem hardwired to hurt people. I think a lot of it's modeling, and it sounds like you weren't really around him. So,
right. Yeah. He didn't really want much to do with us as kids. So
yeah. Although having said that, I don't want you to be in a jail cell one time going, the guy on the podcast told me to let go of my anger. So, my goodness. All right. Anyway, this is fun, Jeremy. I'm having a good time.
I'm glad I can be entertaining. That's good.
Well, listen, not many people come with, something that's been on true crime television. I appreciate you sharing. Wow. Okay. So watch me do this 180. I'm laughing because I feel like it's a transition that doesn't make sense, but I want your opinion about what people can do. Like, forget you, like, forget the kind of provider you are. In a generalized situation, what do people do coming in the door to give themselves the best chance at a good outcome?
I would say taking their diabetes seriously. And I mean, for the best outcomes, the biggest thing I see that prevents people from getting good control is their fear of lows. Yeah. And it takes a lot, especially if someone has an anxiety disorder. It can be really hard for them to accept that, 75 to 90 is a normal blood sugar, and we really should aim for that at all times, like at least like between meals, because they're so scared that they're going to drop low. But if you have the basals correct and, their insulin to carb ratio, and which is something I don't like the concept of, and correction factor, right, then they really shouldn't be in any danger, but they get so scared of lows instead of being scared of highs that it impedes their success. So I think getting over that fear and being willing to experiment is how people are going to be successful. Like, you essentially experimented with Arden, and that's how you were able to find out what worked well for her. Because every person is different. And by experimenting, you find out what works for you, and then you'll know your body better and know how to respond to things. I
just love when you said you don't like the idea of insulin to carb ratio. It is kind of bull. Like
it is. Yeah. It's meal content. Like, right. 45, like 100 grams of carbs when you're eating pizza is way different than 100 grams of carbs if you're eating rice. Like, yeah. They're not the same at all. Like, right. You need to look at meal content because food doesn't behave that way.
Mm-hmm. That's why when I talk about it in order, when I say basal, pre-bolus, glycemic load index, like I don't even really go to, you would think the next thing I would say was make sure your meal ratio, your meal insulin ratio is right. But it does, I mean, unless you eat the same types of food constantly, and then your ratio will probably be pretty close. But if you go from one day from a salad to pizza the next day, and the third day French fries, and then back to salmon and a little balsamic vinaigrette in a little bit of maybe a tiny bit of basmati rice, and something light like that, that ratio is not going to work on those 4 days the same way. And,
exactly.
And people get it into their head. They believe in things like, right, like simple example is, Arden uses a Peacher now, but it was hard for me to believe because a doctor handed me Novolog and said to me, "This is insulin." And I went, "This is insulin. Okay, thank you." I didn't think there were other insulins when somebody gave me Novolog. I believe that was insulin. When someone tells you your insulin to carb ratio is 1 unit for every 15 carbs, you never question that again, even though what comes next should make you obviously say to yourself, "I don't think that ratio worked for this meal." But you don't do that. You think there's some diabetes fairy came down, tapped you on the shoulder and messed you up, and you're not allowed to eat carrots or whatever the hell. Like it's interesting to watch people's minds jump over all the common sense to the next thing. And that's why I agree with you. I think that's it. We should call this episode meal ratios or bullshit.
They are. They really are. I mean, what I do with patients also is I work to remove a lot of the guilt associated with it and kind of put it in their head that you have very little control over when your blood sugars go crazy if you're using something like an insulin to carb ratio, because if you're doing it appropriately and you still don't get good control, it's not your fault that it messed up. It means that there's something wrong on, I would say, my end. Like, we need to figure out what your meal content is and what we need to do to adjust for that.
Yeah.
So I try to take the blame onto myself if things are going wrong, because then I find that people are more willing to experiment that way and they're not as scared. Like, people
like,
with diabetes tend to blame themselves for everything.
Yeah, that's my fault. We should have tried this. And then, like that. And then they're like, oh, it wasn't me. It was him. This guy. Idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Somebody told me recently, I must have said at some point that you wouldn't take a bucket of water and try to put out a house fire, but you can put out a campfire with it. And why do you think that the same amount of insulin would work on, one impact as it would on another impact? And he said, that person said that, just like, they were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting. It's interesting what I've seen over the years, like flip switches for people. It's never the things you think it's going to be, like the real, just, bullet points, very medical. No one really, most people don't jive with that. There's some type A's, you know what I mean? There are some people who just are like, ooh, marching orders, this is great. But I don't think most people think that way. I was wondering, you don't need to be specific, obviously, but for every 10 people you see, how many people struggle versus how many people are just cruising in there like, give me my scripts, Jeremy, so I can get going again because I'm great at this? Like, what's the delineation?
So for patients that have been seeing me for a while, I would say it's probably like 8 out of 10 that are fine. Mm-hmm. New patients that I see, it's usually like 1 to 2 that are out of 10 that are fine, and the rest really need a lot of work. So I would probably say, like, on the grand scheme of things, like 4 out of 10 that I see are doing okay.
What's the time from to yay? How long does it take you to get there?
It depends on the patient, but I would say if someone's really out of control, I am following them very closely. I would say within 6 months, we usually have things in a much better place, if not fully where they need to be.
How much of your liability slows you down from moving them as quickly as you want to?
Liability?
Yeah, like, I mean, if this was a game show and I said you fix somebody's blood sugar in an hour and a half, you think you could do it?
I mean, yes, but like, that's what we do with DKA, but you don't want to actually, that actually brings up something about the Facebook group. Mm-hmm. You don't want to correct someone's blood sugar that quickly because it can cause a lot of problems. So I went on the Facebook group a few months ago and joined and was like, hey guys, I'm an NP and certified diabetes educator, and I'd love to be able to help you guys. And I made a comment in my initial post that said, if your A1, like, I see a lot of people worrying about getting their A1C down as quickly as possible. And I was like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You don't need to get from an A1C of 14 to an A1C of 5 within 3 months. Right. Because it's actually dangerous. So you can actually get what's called treatment-induced neuropathy of diabetes, mm-hmm. Or you can get treatment-induced retinopathy of diabetes, where you rapidly correct someone's blood sugars and their body just can't adapt to it, and they start developing complications from diabetes. And someone who was an internal medicine doctor, I think in Kansas, like, commented and was like, no, you're completely wrong, because her child has type 1 diabetes, and I think she thinks that she's a diabetes expert now. And it got very contentious. I was like posting articles being like, no, I'm completely right. Like, you really shouldn't correct all that fast, more so in like teenagers to adults. But even in kids, it's better to slowly walk them down versus overcorrect quickly. So that's what I tell patients. Like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You want to get there, but we don't need to get there tomorrow.
Right.
Because that also puts a lot of pressure on them that, like, if they don't get it there, then they feel like a failure.
Right. Put some context to it. Like, I think it's obvious you don't want to go from like some outrageous, like, you've been living with a 14 A1C for 10 years and tomorrow it's going to be a 5. But if you're an 8 and you can get to a 6, that's not a big jump, right?
Oh, no, that's not a big jump at all.
Right. You're talking about from real high to real low real quick.
Right.
See, may I make a suggestion? Don't try to talk to people on Facebook. It's not a great idea.
No, it really wasn't. I deleted my post and left the group. I was like, this is going to, I didn't want to get into fights.
Right. You would, but I guarantee you should go back in there and just lurk. Don't talk to anybody. Resist every one of your urges to say anything. You'll learn how people think. You'll learn their desires. You'll learn their fears. You'll learn what works for them and what doesn't. That's the master's class in talking to people. I learn more watching people on Facebook and not interacting with them than I do interacting with them. So it kind of goes back to the how you eat thing. Like, it's nice to think that this is how it should be, or whatever this is. But the truth is, it's however it is. However people live, whatever their impulses are, their fears, their, the things they're willing to listen to or not willing to listen to, you have no control over that. There is this kind of like, I think I've done this thing by mistake where I've kind of created this almost nebulous ball of information that does a good job of feeding everybody, not just a certain somebody. Mm-hmm. And that's not something you can do one-on-one, especially when you get ganged up on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then, by the way, posting articles, that's not the way to go.
Yeah, I was like, here's evidence. Well, I mean, she's a physician. Well, supposedly a physician. Who knows if she actually is? But I was like, that's the way I would talk to a colleague. Like, here's a bunch of evidence that actually supports what I'm saying and why you're wrong. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just so contentious. And she was posting a lot of misinformation to other people. And I ended up deleting it because I'm like, these people don't need to be hearing wrong stuff. Right. I mean, I'm sure she's a great mother. I'm sure she manages her child's diabetes well. But just because you manage your own child's diabetes well doesn't mean you can extrapolate that to other people, because everyone is different. Yeah,
it's a very interesting thing. Everybody thinks that their thing applies to everybody. Like, if you really listen to me, if somebody, did a thesis on this podcast one day, you would really find, no matter what episode you were in, that what I'm talking about is basal, pre-bolus, glycemic load and index, stay flexible. Everything is just off of that. There's nothing else. I'm not saying anything crazy anywhere else. If you, and I'll tell you what, if your A1C was 5 last month and this month you're in DKA, your pancreas just shut off, I don't think there's a ton of concern bringing you from an 11 A1C down into the 6s and 7s. But if you've been 9 even for years, then you're going to want a slower matriculation. But then you do the math too, right? Like, these people have been suffering for so many years, and now suddenly they realize it's a hardship, like, as an adult. Like, imagine living for however many years with an A1C in the 9s or the 10s, and then learning one day that if your basal was just 0.7 higher an hour and you gave yourself insulin 10 minutes before you ate or 15 minutes before you ate, and that fat causes a rise later, you have this feeling of like lost time. It's lost time and lost health. And now it's easy to say, just let's do it a little bit at a time. But you're the linchpin in that. Like, you're the thing that you have and the people you help have that most other people don't have. Most other people don't have constant contact. That's what they need. So how do you give them enough that they can go away on their own and get to a good place? Like, you're doing I think people would say you're doing the Lord's work, like staying in contact with people like that. Whereas most providers aren't going to do that.
Which I think does a disservice to the patients. Like, I think on those providers' parts, like, they're practicing wrong. Like, diabetes isn't something that just happens to them every 3 months. Like, you really should be in contact with your patients.
Yeah.
To me, that's just fundamental.
Don't you feel like the way it's handled is basically it's like you're taking a box of 50 baby birds that are really close to being able to fly, and you go up in an airplane and throw them all out, and you go, oh, I think most of them will be okay, but I'm not going to check.
Yeah, essentially, it's same exact thing.
Yeah. And hopefully they'll be all right. I mean, I've done all I can do. I put them in the air, they fly, they're close to their age, it's fine, let's see what happens. And then you come back 3 months later and you're like, this didn't work. And they go, How about that? We'll try again. And they don't remember you. You've been living for this for 90 days. It's like being in a war. You know what I mean? Like you're steeped in it. You're behind enemy lines. You've got your head down constantly. You always think you're about to get your nuts shot off. And then you show back up to this person who hasn't been in this fight with you for 90 days who goes, oh, I remember war. Yeah. And then they reorient themselves with the last time you spoke to them 90 days ago and try to make another decision. It's a fool's errand. You really can't do that. And then they don't want to hurt you, so they see a low somewhere and take away all your basal and start the whole thing over again.
And it just becomes a self-defeating cycle, basically.
Yeah. And that's how 9 years later you end up being an adult who's had an A1C of 10 for 9 years. Because
and having kidney failure and everything else that comes with that A1C being so high for so long.
Yeah. So listen, Jeremy, I'm going to tell you something. Unless they can get you, I think I've put the thing in the world that works the best so far that I've seen for people with diabetes.
I would agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's why I send so many patients to, I send people with type 1 and type 2 to you because I think it's applicable to them all.
If you were in the Facebook group still, you would have seen John last night, a type 2, who showed us all his graphs from the months and months before the podcast and the months after. And he is doing spectacularly, and he's lost a significant amount of weight. Just from listening to the podcast and having type 2 diabetes. And I never specifically talk about type 2 diabetes usually. And it still worked. Yeah. I didn't even feel weird saying it when as it was starting to come out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, you're going to say something nice about yourself and people are going to think that's weird. But I just genuinely believe it. I think that what we've discovered over this last hour is you need consistent conversation. It can't be getting jammed down your throat. It has to be something that you can hear, believe, and take in. It has to be something you can do on your own, and it can't be all at once. You need it matriculated over time, and that's what the podcast does. And then there are other people that tell me that even after they're in a good place, they use it almost like maintenance. It's probably the equivalent of like an AA meeting for some people. Let me just go listen to a person who has type 1 today so I keep my head in the game a little bit, Yeah,
and actually that's what I like about listening to the podcast, because I get to hear people living with diabetes and their own lived experience, which I get that from my patients, but you go much more in depth and it's a more different perspectives that help inform me of what it's like to live with diabetes. There was one guy, it took me 4 or 5 days to get through the podcast episode because he would start, you were talking to him about, I don't remember his name. You were talking to him about complications from diabetes and how he was living with his complications. Mike, and he would start breaking up and crying and I would lose it. I would just start bawling. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pause it and come back to it when I feel emotionally ready. But that one wrecked me
It's really important. His conversation's incredibly important.
It is.
You can't live every day like you think your kidneys are going to explode 50 years from now, and you can't ignore it, that it could happen. You know what I mean? You have to be somewhere between, a little blissfully ignorant, day to day. When you get a blood sugar that's 180, you can't sit around out of your mind in a puddle on the floor, and you can't forget that that's not okay either. You have to find a psychological middle ground that you're willing to live in so that you can live today well and live tomorrow and in the future well at the same time. Because it isn't, listen, I don't really outright say it very often, but you ignore your diabetes, something bad's going to happen to you. That's just what's going to happen. You're not going to avoid that. You're not going to be the 110-year-old lady smoking cigarettes on the local news going, I'm going to live forever. Listen, I'm not a doctor. Okay. But there's a certain amount of sugar molecule that belongs in your blood. It keeps your brain running. If you have too little, you just die. Your brain shuts off. The sugar in your blood is energy, keeps your brain going. You have too little, you shut off. That's it. You don't get to turn it back on again. Once it's off, it's off. Too much sugar is acting as an abrasive agent inside of your blood, and your blood flows everywhere down to the tiniest capillaries, like through arteries and veins and everywhere. And it's flesh, and it's scraping. Now that sugar is in there, scraping and scraping and scraping. And eventually a hole pops in one of them. And that is a stroke if it happens in your brain. If it happens in your heart, it's a heart attack. If it happens in your toes, you can't feel your toes anymore. Like that's what you're avoiding. You need a balance of that sugar molecule in your blood. It needs to be the right amount, not too little, not too much. And it sucks, but that's the truth, So get in the game. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think of the pro tips? Have you been through them all?
Yep. I mean, I love them all. Like, that's what those are the episodes that I send to patients for them to actually listen to.
I'm glad we worked hard on them. Actually, we're going to add to them this year too. Jenny,
awesome.
Yeah, Jenny and I are finishing up a defining thyroid series right now. And then we are going to basically do like director's commentary ish types of stuff for the pro tips. We're going to go back and listen to them, and then we're going to come and kind of like add to them a little bit with new episodes, just to kind of maybe supercharge them a little bit. So
yeah, and one thing that I'm hoping changes in the future is the whole pre-bolusing thing. So I use so I would say for 90% of patients, it's impossible to pre-bolus for every meal because it takes a lot of planning, especially people with kids. It can flip their day upside down. So I actually have been switching a lot of people to either Fiasp or Lumjev, which are more rapid acting. And the change is so much better. They can give it right when they start eating, and it gives them the same effect as if they gave it 15 minutes before. But that's one thing I think pharmaceutical companies need to focus on, is making insulin function more like actual human insulin so that people can live a normal life.
Yeah. I also think that right there with it is cannula technology. So so cannulas, they should be working on materials that don't look foreign as best they can to your body, because bad sites are also an issue. You go through all the things we just talked about, get all your settings right, do everything, and then your site starts going bad, and you're like, geez, it's not one thing, it's another. I will tell you that I tried Fiasp for Arden. It burned and left her feeling bruised. She could power through it, but it was very, very unpleasant.
I believe it's the niacin that's in it that makes it act faster, which will also cause a burning.
Yeah. So then we tried
sensation.
The Lumjev. That was, she described as twice as bad as the Fiasp for her.
Oh, interesting. I've had a lot of people with it using it through a pump that have had it do great control, but also have burning. So they went back to Humalog instead.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, Arden could wear the Fiasp. She wore the Fiasp pod for weeks. It always hurt her. The site was sore. It burned going in, but she dealt with it. The Lumjev, if I'm saying it right, 2 days, less than 48 hours, she's like, take this pod off. Like, she couldn't get through it. So it's no luck for us. So yeah, whatever they figured out makes it work better. They got to figure out this piece next.
Yeah. I mean, the Pedra works really well too, but I find that it's hard to get insurance coverage for it. Usually insurance will prefer Humalog or Novolog. And if both of those don't work, I can usually get it covered.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's an insurance game too. Like, the insurance companies are awful. I hate them so much.
Yeah, I imagine. Arden's been using Apidra forever. At this point, like, it's so long, I couldn't remember when she used to use Novolog. It was so long ago. And I find the way I describe Apidra is it's incredibly smooth. There's not a ton of like, oh my God, it's working too much now, or it's not working enough now. And you can kind of pre-bolus, and you can use larger amounts, at least for Arden. And it's just, there's not a lot of, I don't see double arrows ever. Like, I honestly, a straight arrow up or down is fairly uncommon around here. I mean, a straight arrow down is really uncommon around here. A straight arrow up, okay, if we miss a pre-bolus, like you just said, but double arrows in either direction, I have not seen in forever. I love Apidra, actually. I wish they would advertise on the show. Honestly, I'd have no trouble being able to talk about Apidra. That's for sure.
With Arden's, what, 16 or 17?
She's 17, going to be 18 this summer.
When, is she going off to college in the fall?
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I hope she doesn't talk to any boys.
Like, in terms of her diabetes, like, do you think she's gonna, I mean, from listening when you had her on the show, I think it was a few months ago that the episode aired.
Yeah.
I honestly like love that episode because she and I have a very similar sense of humor. So I was laughing the entire time with like I loved her attitude. Do you think she's gonna do okay managing on her own?
Yeah. So, I mean, keeping in mind that the podcast episode's a moment in time, like we've been working on this, getting ready for Arden to go to college for 10 years. And we're still doing it now. Like she and I actually had a really long conversation about a week or so ago when I said, look, you know, I know right now she's applying to colleges. She's just about done. She's been accepted to she's been accepted to every college that she's applied to so far.
Oh, so awesome.
She's super excited. She has one that she definitely wants to go to. She's holding out to hear about one or two more before she decides. But I said, as soon as this whole college application process is over, you and I are going to go back on the podcast and talk again, nuts and bolts. And then we're going to put that stuff in practice in our real life. Now, keep in mind, like, I'm not up her butt constantly about her blood sugar. You know what I mean? I help her, but I also think the process, I honestly think you're learning through the process. You know, she changed a pod about 45 minutes before you and I started recording. And I said to her, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here. Right. So maybe 20 minutes before you and I got on, I saw an arrow, like she started going the wrong way. So we took her old pod off. Site looked a little angry. Is that a good way to put it? And yeah. And I could tell that the site wasn't working as well as I wanted it to for about the last 5 hours. So much so that I sent her a text while she was at school because she caught some adrenaline from gym and the algorithm couldn't do anything about it. It was trying and trying and it wasn't having impact. So I said to her, hey, I think the pod's done. We're going to change it when you get home. For now, let's make a bigger bolus. So we bolused a little more. We turned this 150 back into like a 120 by the time she got home. But as soon as we popped the pod off and put the new one on, maybe 20 or 30 minutes later, we started seeing up again. She started going 130, 140 diagonal up. And I told her what to do there. Like I said, let's open the loop, which for people who don't know about like pumping, like basically turn the algorithm off. Let's run this like a normal pump for now. I want you to get your background basal insulin because we're going to make a correction bolus here. And we don't want the algorithm to take away the basal. So we opened the loop, turned off the algorithm, made a bolus that I knew would correct it. And probably about 5 minutes ago, actually, while you were talking, I texted her again. I said, close the loop. Her blood sugar is 95 now. So would she know how to do all that? Ish. You know what I mean? But we're going to have that conversation more just to make sure she understands like the ins and outs of the algorithm. I also think it's incredibly possible that Arden's going to be using Omnipod 5 when she goes to college and not a loop.
Hopefully the FDA needs to get that approved now. Like I have so many patients that need to go on it.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen in any second now. So that I'm happy about. But also I don't want to spend a ton of time over explaining the algorithm she's using now only to move her to a different one. So I'm waiting for that little gap in time. And then we'll keep going. I honestly think she's going to be okay. I think the bigger issue with her being away is going to be the impact it has on her at nighttime. Because there is still now, you know, a time or two a month where you change a pod at the wrong time of day and then you end up with a high blood sugar as you're going to bed. And you make a bolus for it and you overdo it. And then somebody has to help you at 2 a.m. Like that's the time I'm more concerned about for her.
Yeah.
You know, and even at that, you know, the other day I did say to her just kind of in passing, I was like, hey, listen, we should start paying more attention to when we change your gear. I was like, we don't do it now because it's not really problematic, but there are times of day where you should start thinking about changing your pump so that you don't have overnight issues. I'd rather you have a daytime problem than a nighttime problem when you're at school. And she was just like, all right, you know, and so that's the stuff we'll do. But I don't see her leaving as some finite ending to our story. Like, you know, I can do diabetes blindfolded and I can do it at a distance too. I won't have any trouble helping her get settled at school, I don't think.
I think I was actually more interested in like the alcohol conversation. If you've talked about her with that, how that's going to affect her. Cause I mean, hopefully she doesn't drink until she's 21, but it's college and That's a big sticking point for a lot of my young adult patients, managing how to consume alcohol and also manage their pump.
Yeah, I imagine my kids aren't drinkers. Either my wife and I. Like, it would be incredibly shocking to me if my children drank to excess.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I mean, even one drink, like one glass of wine can be pretty dramatic for some people.
Yeah, my kids have grown up with, like we talked about modeling earlier. Like in our extended family, there's modeling that has made my children, they don't want to drink.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So
avoiding alcohol in general is good, but with diabetes, it's always a good idea anyway. But
no kidding. I mean, can I tell you she's never going to do it? No. Can I tell you she's not going to change into a completely different person? I mean, I don't think so. She's pretty headstrong. Like, I think she knows who she is enough. I don't think you could push Arden off of who she is, if that makes sense. Yep. So if that ends up being who she is, then we'll have to figure out how to handle that. But I'd be surprised, I guess. We'll see.
She seemed like she had a good head on her shoulders. She was very bright.
She's basically me with, like, in a girl's body. She's very just kind of like, she has a dry sense of humor. She's confident. She's smart. She knows what she knows. She knows what she doesn't know. She doesn't try to play in sandboxes she doesn't understand. She's she's consistent. So, and she's tough. Like, she really is a tough kid. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I know it's in the back of my head. I'm like, it's going to happen. One of them's going to turn into a heroin addict or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, God.
Now listen.
But you have clarity on her anyway, so if she dropped low in the middle of the night, you'd get an alert on her, correct?
Yes, yeah, but she's going to be too far away for me to do anything about it. So,
what I usually recommend parents do is actually get to know the roommate of them and have their number. I actually had a patient who was on an Omnipod. This was like 6 or 7 years ago, who was on Dexcom. Something happened to her pod, like it was a malfunctioning pod where it did something to her basal rate, and she was like, basically she was like 30s overnight, and she didn't wake up to it. And her mom got the alert at like 3 or 4 in the morning, or actually woke up to it and called the roommate, and the roommate actually was able to go in there and give her glucagon and bring her back up. And without that, she probably would have died.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. No, I'm going to make sure I have 19 different ways to get to her. Don't worry about that.
Good.
Including, I'll probably put an air raid sign in her dorm room, and I'll just control it remotely. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I tell that to like husbands and wives. I tell that like to anyone that has any sort of partner or like in their life, to get clarity and share it and make sure that you are always connected. I had another person who went low in the middle of the night. She was on a business trip in Japan. Her husband got the alert, called the hotel. They had to break into the room to wake her up because she wasn't responding to it, and then she was able to treat it and be fine. But if she didn't have that, who knows what would have happened? Yeah,
it's terrible. It really is. This diabetes sucks. It's it's not great news. All right, listen, Jeremy, we went over time. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted me to?
I don't think so, but I'd love to do this again. I love talking about diabetes. So,
Jeremy, I don't see how you're not going to be back on the show. What do you think of that?
Oh, that's great. That'd be awesome.
Dude, you came with stories. You have a clear view of how to handle type 1. Let's stay in touch. I really appreciate you doing this. I really do.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, it was a real pleasure. A huge thanks to Jeremy for coming on the show and talking with me about what he does for a living and some of my ideas as well. Thank you, Jeremy. I also want to thank Dexcom and remind you to go to dexcom.com/juicebox to see if you're eligible for a free 10-day trial of the Dexcom G6. And of course, omnipod.com/juicebox. Find out about the Omnipod DASH and the Omnipod 5 and get yourself going with the tubeless insulin pump that Arden's been wearing since she was 4 years old. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com to these and all the sponsors. When you click the links, you're supporting the show. If you're into helping people, especially people with type 1 diabetes, I'd like to ask you to go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. When you get there, fill out the survey completely, and you've helped somebody. All you need to be is a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes or is the caregiver of someone with type 1. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. Join the registry, complete the survey, help someone with type 1 diabetes, help yourself perhaps, and support the Juicebox Podcast. You will do all of this in the fewer than 10 minutes that it will take to go to that link and complete the survey. The survey is very simple. You'll know all the answers to all the questions. It is also HIPAA compliant and completely anonymous. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. There are links in the show notes of your podcast player and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to all of the sponsors and to T1D Exchange. When you take the time to click on my links or to type them in a browser, you're telling the sponsors that you came from the Juicebox Podcast, and that is a wonderful way to support the show. Are you looking for a vibrant and intelligent community around diabetes? Look no farther than the Facebook page, the private Facebook page for the Juicebox Podcast. It's called Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. The group has over 28,000 members, and those members are responsible for between 70 and 110 new posts every day on the Facebook page. Every conceivable conversation around diabetes is happening at Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. You're going to see great questions, thoughtful answers, and supportive people. No matter if you're an adult living with type 1 diabetes or the caregiver of someone with type 1, this group is for you. Doesn't matter if you eat low carb or high carb or somewhere in between. Your questions and thoughts are welcome on our Facebook page. I hope you check it out. Last little bit, if you're looking for the Diabetes Pro Tip series or the Defining Diabetes series or any of the other multitude of series that exist within the podcast, you can find them in a number of ways. They are at juiceboxpodcast.com. They are at diabetesprotip.com. And if you belong to the private Facebook group, you can find them listed in the featured tab. Now, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider sharing it with someone else. That helps the podcast grow more than anything. Word of mouth is definitely how the show has become what it is. If you have already shared it with everybody you can think of, and you've bought an Omnipod or a Dexcom or supported one of the other sponsors, you've done the T1D Exchange survey, and now you're looking for another way to give back to the podcast, super simple. A 5-star rating and a thoughtful review in whichever audio app you listen in would be amazing. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.